Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back and thank you for your continued support. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and these videos also go out on YouTube. If you go onto any of those social media platforms and search for the Hard Compound, you will find us. So do give us a follow, hit that reminder bell on Twitter so you can see whenever we put up some tweets. We like to think we're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, single-seaters, touring cars, F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, W Series, bikes. Anything you can shake a stick at, we try and cover it with news, articles. We're planning on running a couple of competitions soon. And we provide backing for some of the best young drivers and riders in the UK and Ireland. In case you hadn't noticed, we also do live interviews. Welcome along, everyone. As I said, all of these interviews are recorded as well as going out live. They're on the video section on Facebook and on our YouTube and on Twitter. Mentioned some of the young drivers and riders that we do some backing for. We've had a couple of them on the show. Just recently, Emily Linscott came on with her father. Now, Emily's doing some great things out in the USA in the US F4 Championship. And she's really going places, being mentored by Pippa Mann. And we also had a young lady by the name of Kales Cole from Ireland. She's been doing great things in karting. She's just made the step up to F1000. So do go and give Kales and Emily a follow. Really talented young ladies, and they're really going far. Emily was joined by her father, Mark Linscott, who used to race in the Bennett's British Superbike Championship, as it is now, and MotoGP. If you like your racing to have two wheels, we've also got interviews stored with Bjorn Esmont and with six-time BSB champion Shane Byrne, which was absolutely terrific. If you prefer your cars, if you prefer your racing to have four wheels and roofs, we've spoken with Michael Crease, who was in the British Touring Car Championship, now on the Porsche Mobil 1 Super Cup grid in support of the F1 series. We've also spoken with Ryan Falconbridge, Alex Neville and Bradley Gravitt from the Mini Challenge series, which is in support of the British Touring Car Championship. And Bradley Gravitt came on with his dad, Rob, the 1990 BTCC champion, which was fantastic. Speaking of that era, we've also spoken with Steve Soper and John Cleland. We've also spoken with the boss of West Surrey Racing, Mr. Dick Bennett, absolute legend, credited with launching the careers of Ayrton Senna, Mika Häkkinen, Rubens Barrichello, and the like. And there's a link to tonight's guest as well with Dick Bennett as well, and we'll come to that. With current British touring car drivers, we've spoken with Ollie Jackson. We've spoken with Matt Neal, who obviously has now departed, but we've spoken with Ollie Jackson, Jade Edwards, Brad Philpott, Jake Hill. Just recently, we spoke with Tom Chilton, Chris Smiley, Rick Parfitt. We've spoken with a lot of them. We've also spoken with Andy Prio, Tom Coronel, and Louise Goodman from the media side, which was absolutely terrific. We've also spoken with a few single-seater racers, or people who are famous for racing in single-seaters. Namely Ari Lyondike, two-time Indy 500 winner, Danny Sullivan, famous for the spin and win in '85 at the Indy 500 and the 1988 IndyCar champion. Just recently, we've spoken with David Brabham, which was absolutely terrific. We've spoken with Derek Warwick and also with Mario Andretti, which was a real privilege. So they're all in the video section on Facebook. They're all on YouTube. So do go and check them out. But don't do it just yet. Wait till we finish tonight, because we have another guest this evening. He's raced in Formula One, notably for McLaren and Ferrari. He's a British Formula 3 champion. He's won the Le Mans 24 Hours. He's driven an IndyCar. He now manages some top racing drivers, and he's a very good artist based out in LA. But tonight he's joining us from Stockholm. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Stefan Johansson.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good evening, Stefan. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Yes, pretty good, pretty good. Bit of a long rambling intro there. Sorry to keep you waiting, but we've got to promote the page a bit. But,
No worries.
no, cool. So thank you so much for coming and joining us this evening. Very much appreciated.
Pleasure.
Appreciate you've just flown over from the States fairly recently, so thank you very much. How's everything going?
Yeah, it's going good. Great. Finally able to travel again. It's the first time I've been able to come over to Europe since, oh my God, it's like last September, I think.
Wow,
So yeah,
it's been a long time. It's been a strange year, hasn't it?
no, to say the least, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been based out in LA with the art studio and everything, which we'll
Mhm.
come to a bit later. But how has the lockdown COVID situation affected you? Obviously, you said it's affected your movements,
Yeah,
to
I
and
mean,
from
it
Europe.
affected
But
the travel obviously quite a bit, but it's actually, to be brutally honest, it's been quite good because I've been locked up in my studio for best best part of 8 months, which was great, because I didn't have any interruptions and it was good. I've been quite productive and enjoyed it, but I do miss the racing or did miss the racing, so it's nice to be able to go to the track and meet all the old friends, and get the juices flowing again as you do when you go to races. It is a special thing, and I think every race fan, whether you're a fan or actually involved in the business, is can appreciate that. That it's that excitement you get every time you drive through the gates on a racetrack and get involved. It's a great thing.
yeah, it's nice to have the buzz back. I mean, obviously, because you guys are out in the States, you've been able to get to races, albeit with some limited attendance for the last, well, not the last year or so, but the last few months. Whereas over here, we're just only going back now.
Yeah,
Obviously, we've got full capacity coming up for the British Grand Prix. That's been given special dispensation, but all the UK series are hopefully going back in the next 2 weeks, and the fans are going to go back. Touring cars and the bikes and everything. So
Mhm.
I think everyone's looking forward to getting back trackside and smelling the engines and waiting in the queue to get out the car park for 3 hours and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is, and even for the competitors, to have people in the stands makes such a huge difference. It's
Yeah,
a totally different thing. Like last year's Indy, there was no one. It was the weirdest thing ever. It
yeah.
was like this giant test session, and there was no bus, nothing when someone passed. This year you couldn't even hear the engines, at the start of the race. It was great.
No, I mean, obviously we've just been watching it on TV over here, and I was actually meant to be at the 500 this year for it was my 40th birthday in January, and I was planning on coming out, but we shelved it for this year.
Yeah.
And I've often said to everyone in the last few weeks that I wanted someone that I didn't want to win it. Yeah, because I should have been there. And then when Helio won it, I was like, oh no, because I should have been there because it was fantastic to see him, wasn't it? See him win that
Yeah.
fourth one and go back up the fence.
Yeah. No, definitely. It was, it's great for the show. Great, great, great stories. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just say hi to everyone who's tuning in. Oliver Taylor, that's he's a big fan of the page. He's been very supportive. He's he's called Artified on Twitter, and he said that he's actually spoken with some of your team before, and he said he's also an artist, and he says that he wants to say in person that your artwork is absolutely sublime.
Oh, yeah, I can
As
read
an
it now.
artist himself, your work really does speak to him on many levels. So
Well,
that's
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I mean, that means a lot actually when you hear someone say that.
yeah, and he is a very talented guy. He makes things out of upcycled F1 parts and
Oh,
all
really?
kinds of
Oh,
things.
I'd love to see the stuff sometime. If
Yeah, he's a bit of a mad
I don't
scientist,
have
but
your
yeah,
contacts, but if there's a way to share it, yeah, I would love to see the stuff sometimes.
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
We'll fire a link over when we're done.
Mhm.
Sven Levers, I hope that's correct. Yes, this is a poor replica Onyx T-shirt. You're quite correct.
I know Sven. He's a huge Onyx fan, and I know Emma too. I see Emma sent a message here. Emma Crawley.
Yes,
She's a big support of
yeah, big
big follower.
Stefan fan
Yeah,
and new to the
really
hard compound. So
incredible.
welcome, Emma. Thank you for tuning
Hey
in.
Emma, how are you? Good to hear.
We've got a few
Not good
people.
to
We've got
see you,
Paul.
but good to see you following here.
Good to see the words. Thomas Day follows the page quite often. Good evening, Thomas. Thank you for tuning in. Paul Ablett, again, follows the page. So lots of people tuning in. Thank you very much, guys. If you've got any questions, do put them in there and we will do our best to get to them. So we've gone on for a while. Actually, as I said, what we like to do is just sort of have a bit of a quick chat about your career, have a run through and everything, all very informal. If there's anything we don't want to talk about, we can skip over it, no problem. But yeah, basically, how did it all start? Obviously, you were born in a town in Sweden that I'm not even going to try and pronounce. I'm going to let you do that. But how did you get into motorsport?
Well, my dad was sort of doing club racing back in Sweden, so I grew up with it. You know, I used to go to races with him when I was like 3-4 years old. So it was part of my life from the moment I could walk, really. You know, and then obviously that led to karting. You know, as soon as you were allowed to race karts, and you know, and from there it went.
Yeah, just went from there because it was just always around.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. I just wanted to get into this straight away because because I've always said that your crash helmet design eventually was one of the coolest ones with the leaves on it. I just absolutely love it. It was just so distinctive. So that your father's nickname was the Leaf. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you know where that came from?
Yeah, it came from it was really a house called Lövåsen, which is kind of like the Leaf Hill or whatever, Leafy Hill or something like that in Swedish. Okay. So he became the Leaf or Leafy when he was driving. And then everybody in Sweden, if they have a dad who's sort of got a nickname of any sort, they become Little automatically. You know, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you got no choice in that one. It's basically how it is. Yeah. So I became Little Leaf, you know, as soon as I started racing. And then it's weird here in Sweden because more people know me. They don't even know my first name, you know, they just know Little Leaf or Lillövitz. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird. It's yeah.
So you're known as that, and obviously that's where the helmet design came from, which is which is very cool. And as I said, it is one of the best ones I can remember because as I said previously, I got into F1 in about '86, and the first thing you notice is the crash helmets. It was like Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, the yellow one, and then yours. It was like he's got leaves on it. It was kind of that was.
Well, you think? I mean, the first race we did in Mexico in '86, Mexican Grand Prix. I became an instant national hero because the Mexicans thought they were jalapenos. For real. So it was like, oh, the jalapeno guy, he's my man.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. I didn't realize. Oh, that's fair. So you were instant hero.
Yeah,
yeah. Brilliant. You gained a few thousand fans straight off the bat. No, brilliant. So yeah, that's all good. I mean, so you went from karting, obviously had some success in karting when you did that, and I've just got to know you were starting in 1979 is where my notes start. You can obviously fill me in if I've missed anything, but 1979 European F2. How did that come about? Getting into the F2 series, was there a few steps in between?
No, that's not true, actually. I did. In '79, I did F3 in England.
F3, sorry.
Yeah, with Derek McMahon racing. So my teammate were actually Eddie Jordan and Bernard Devaney from Ireland.
Wow, so Eddie Jordan.
Irish teammates and an Irish team owner, and fresh off the bus from Sweden. So you can imagine how that went. You know, it's like I had a proper education of bad behavior for the first year I was over there, but.
I mean, so how did that come about? Obviously, with an Irish team, two Irish drivers, Irish everything. How did a guy from Sweden slot into there?
I think it's just an opportunity opened up, you know, for a seat basically. And I had Chris Whitty, who was a journalist back then, and Ian Phillips. They were quite helpful in sort of maneuvering the whole deal back then. And got me in because I didn't really know any of them, you know, before I did some races the year before in '78 in an Argo, and I almost won the Donington British F3 race actually in the Argo. I just got beaten by Derek Warwick, who won the championship that year. So I had a kind of an intro in '78 already,
right?
And then I got a full-time driving 79 with Derek McMahon, and that's sort of how it all got started. And outside of Sweden, yeah.
Okay. Oh, cool. Something I've been fascinated in was obviously I mentioned that we spoke with Dick Bennett, who was obviously proper legend over here. He's an honorary Brit these days, and he's just got married. So congratulations, Dick.
Oh really? Oh well.
Yeah, he just got married. So if he does see this, congratulations to Mr. Bennett. Obviously, he was involved, in the very early stages of like West Surrey racing. But you, was it 1980? You were with Ron Dennis with Project 4 Racing, and I can't remember. Do correct me if I'm wrong. Was Dick involved with that team, or was he?
Absolutely, yeah, very much so. Yeah. So Dick ran the M1 program to start with that year, Ron, and then at the end of the year, we switched from the March, which was the 1980 March F3 car, was not a very good car. We struggled all year with it. Everybody struggled with the car. In fact, Kenny, who was my biggest rival for the championship, Kenny Atchison, he raced the 79 car most of the year.
Right.
And Roberto Guerrero, he was in the Argo, and then we switched to the Rolt, and at the same time, Ron switched the team management, so Dick took over the running of the car, and it was great. I mean, Dick was fantastic. The car was great, of course. The Rolt was a whole totally different car. Way better than the March was back then. But Dick had a huge part in it too. Also on me personally, because he was very, very good at kind of getting the most out of you. So it was a great end of the year there for sure, and a lot of it was thanks to Dick Bennett for sure.
Oh, cool. I mean, he's, as we know, he's an amazing engineer. And some of the things he was telling us in the chat, how to,
Well, he's the sort of the appeal. I always sort of joke. I mean, sort of jokingly, but it's also true. I mean, the really great engineers are actually better psychologists than they are engineers. Because they always manage to get that last couple of tenths out of you somehow. And that's got nothing to do with the car. It's just the right moment. They managed to pull that little bit extra out of you somehow.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you say about the psychology thing. I remember he did say when we were talking to him, he had like Jonathan Palmer under his wing. I think.
Jonathan took over. His sponsor took over my car, Dick, the whole 9 yards, and it became West Surrey.
Yes.
After that year, because Ron went off to do the McLaren thing.
Yeah.
And
which went okay.
Yeah. Didn't do too bad with that.
Yeah, it seemed to good. But Dick was saying that when he was with like Jonathan Palmer, JP was saying, "Oh, we need to tweak this. Can we change something? I think we can get a bit more out of the car." And he goes, "Yeah, just leave it with us. Go and have some lunch. Go and do something." And he came back like an hour later and he says, "Oh yeah, we've adjusted the front roll thing and we've done this and we've done," and I hadn't done anything to the car, not at all.
Yeah.
And Palmer went out and put another 2 tenths on it.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah, he just said that was it. And Dick did speak very, very highly of you when he was on. He said, I think his words were, "You were one heck of a peddler."
Yeah.
So there you go.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. He's obviously happy with it. So 1980, obviously this was British. It was British F3 at the time, wasn't it? And you won the championship around then, didn't you? You won the title. This is a question that always comes up, so I'm going to ask it now. What was your favourite circuit in the UK to drive?
All those tracks were great. I mean, like Cadwell Park, Mallory, Snetterton was great. I always those long, fast corners.
Yeah.
But I think my all-time favorite really was the old Silverstone Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah.
Because it was just big balls the whole way, it was really, but you could suck another couple of tenths out of yourself, if you really, really went for it, and Club and Stowe particularly. So it was always my favorite track.
Yeah, because that was before they put the little chicane in at the after Abbey, wasn't it? A woodcut, and he just used to come hammering down from Club and just.
I mean, Stowe and Club was flat, even in an F1 car on a qualifiers, it was flat in top gear.
Wow.
But I mean, which
you can't do that now, obviously.
Literally, you blow it, the car would just lose the grip.
Wow.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Proper racing, yeah. It's a shame, because obviously, we've got Silverstone's good for spectators now, but it sort of lost something for me. As I said, I got into it just when they had the little temporary chicane thing at Woodcote before they put in the full chicane, and I loved it back then. But it's just kind of lost something. But I'm still going to the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So
we all do. Everybody keeps complaining, but we still go and stuff.
Exactly. It's I don't like this and I don't like that. Yeah, but you still go, won't you? Yeah. Always the way. Just seen Emma said that we're loving all the old stories. We're going to have more of those, and said that she wishes you'd write a book. Everyone says that. Everyone who comes on there.
I promise I will write the book one day. I'm taking a ton of notes, and I will. It's just pulling the trigger and really sort of sit down and just knuckle down and do it. But
Yeah.
I want. Yeah. I mean, I always joke. Also, I said, unfortunately, if I'm going to do the book, it's going to have to be published the day after I die, because if I'm going to tell everything, then I'll never be able to go back to the paddock again, as long as I live.
Yeah, so I have to wait till the health starts to wobble and then say, right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it already. Very much looking forward to it already. Yeah. Just seen that Chris McMahon said the old circuit at Silverstone with the original Stowe Club were proper big balls corners. Yeah, correct. Yeah. Oh, and we need 500.
Definitely.
And it says that we need 500 pages about the Moneytron time. We're going to come to Moneytron soon, shortly. But yeah, go back to it. Around that time, you had 2 drives for Shadow in F1. How did that one come about? Because it was 2 drives. I've got to didn't qualify. Sorry, but
yeah, it was very weird. So Chris Whitty again, my old mate, one of my best friends in the world, actually, still to this day, took me up to meet Bert Baldwin who then ran the Shadow team.
Right.
And it was really just that. I mean, I had, I wasn't even like ready to win an F3 at that point, Sure. So we just went up there to say hi and sort of took a tour and had a cup of tea, and spent a couple of hours walking around the factory and everything. And then about a week later, I got a call asking if I wanted to do the Argentine and the Brazilian Grand Prix. Because,
yeah. What went through your head when they asked you that?
Was it, but I mean, it was like most times in my career, it was always last minute, no testing, straight, literally flew out to Buenos Aires, made the seat in the pit lane the day before first practice. So my first ever lap in an F1 car was the first official practice session at a track I've never been, and never driven anything more powerful than an F3 car at that point. Goodness. And all my heroes are there, like Reutemann, Villeneuve, Mario Andretti. I spend more time looking in my mirrors, making sure I was not in the way of anyone.
Was your head just doing that? Was it just?
Oh, it's just my brain was just fried, But
wow.
I mean, it was, but the car was a disaster, basically, So it wasn't. But yeah, it was a good experience. But after Brazil, I decided, it's better. Then Ron offered me the drive in the F3, with Project 4, and I thought that's probably a better way to, really, because I wasn't ready for Formula One anyway, really, and
Sure.
And I needed at least another couple of years of just learning the racecraft and everything else, that goes with it. So
yeah, rather than going in at the deep end, as it were.
Yeah, and as it were, the team folded like one race later, I think. So
yeah, I saw it was. Yeah, they weren't around for too long. Just mentioned about Carlos Reutemann. Obviously, very sad news this week that he's passed away.
Yeah, no, very sad.
Really sad. One of those drivers who sort of sometimes maybe gets forgotten when you're looking back over history. Everyone sort of thinks about like Lauda and Mario and like Ronnie and all those guys. But yeah, really, really sad.
Really, great guy too.
Probably should have won the title in 80. Was it 81? He probably should have won it, shouldn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, real shame. Very, very sad.
Coulda, woulda. It's the same. I mean, everybody's got a story. It's always something. But you tend to forget that. It's just kind of all you remember is what's in the history books.
Yeah. No, very sad news this week. So just moving forward into, was it 81 was in F2? Was that into F2 was that with Tolman, I think?
That was with Alan Docking, with Tolman.
Yeah. So I've done I've done a little bit of research, and and you went into F2 with Alan Docking Motorsport, and you had wins at Hockenheim and our home turf at Manstorp, 4th overall. Pretty good start, pretty good first season.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, we started the season with the Tolman that was built by Lola. So they kind of licensed the build of the car to Lola the following year, because before that it was 2 factory cars for Brian Henton and Derek Warwick. They didn't have any other cars. So then Docking started running it, and I think a few other teams also then had the Tolman, and Lola built the cars, but the cars never felt right. It was always just didn't have that feel in the car,
Right.
And so halfway through the year, we switched to the original, factory car from the year before, and it was just a totally different car. I mean, it was hooked up. You could feel everything. I mean, it was just responding to everything you wanted. So then we started to get a lot better results suddenly, and that. But it was a pretty good year, nevertheless.
Yeah, things kind of picked up a bit. I say it was 4th overall and had a couple of wins, and Hockenheim, the proper Hockenheim as I call it. That was a cracking circuit.
It was a funny race actually, Hockenheim, because we had some problem with the engines in practice. So I think I qualified like 20th or something, and drove through the whole field, and actually got Manfred Winkelhock in the Sachs curve on the very last lap, which didn't go down too well with the Germans. I was
going to say, he's a bit of the home hero, wasn't he?
The F2 race back then used to have 100,000 people, and it was packed.
Sure, yeah. Wow. Could you hear the boo? Were they booing?
I could hear the silence very clearly.
Silence. Yeah, the deafening silence. Nah, you got to. It doesn't matter who he is. If he's a local hero, you got to beat them. Following year, again F2 with Spirit Racing.
Yeah.
How did that switch come about?
I knew John Wickham quite well because he was running the March F2 team the year before, and I knew Gordon a little bit as well, and they approached me quite sort of about midway through the season, I would say, that they were starting up this new team with big support from Honda and Bridgestone, and so it looked like a very proper, promising deal, so I decided to go down that route, and obviously they got myself and Terry Boots in the other car. Yeah. And it was, the car was good, the engine was great and everything. We had a lot of problems with the tires the first year. They kept blowing up and delaminating and stuff, but I think I had pole in the first 6 races or something.
Wow.
But then something always, most of the time we had tire issues in the beginning, engine sometime and stuff. So it wasn't, points wise, it wasn't the greatest year, but we were very quick.
Yeah. And we've got Sven's just said about the Marlboro sponsorship as well, which is,
Yeah, well, they managed to get the Marlboro deal, fully backed by Marlboro, and I was already a Marlboro driver then, so
sure.
Then that kind of obviously had a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, kind of came with it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Wim Hendricks, hello Wim, thank you for joining us. He says it was a close call between you and Thierry. He says there. I'm not sure.
He's probably referring to the following year when we then went to Formula One.
Yeah, I was going to say, was there always a plan to get into Formula One with the team?
To be the driver rather than Thierry. And I'm sure obviously it was a close call, and I'm not sure why they chose me over Thierry, but they did, and I was grateful for that. But as it turned out, it probably helped Thierry's career because he had to go somewhere, and he obviously ended up in a much better seat than the Spirit Honda. So it worked out quite well for him too.
It's quite odd actually. I've already shown you. Got a little picture of you up here. I like just here. This picture here. That's Thierry Boutsen in the arrows. A signed picture.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the '86 one, the Barclay one, because he went there and then Williams and
exactly, yeah.
and onwards. So was there always a plan in the team in '82? Was there always a plan to get into F1? Was it a natural progression, or was it something that was decided later on?
No, we didn't know anything about it when we started, but that sort of again came around about halfway through the year. There was talk about maybe them entering F1, with Spirit.
Right. So they were talking about it. Just before we go on to F1, I've just seen Simon Hill. Good evening, Simon. Simon's son, Jake, actually competes in the British Touring Car Championship, and he's doing very well. He's come on for a chat, and he's a very, very good guy. So good evening, Simon. Thank you for your question. Bit of a long one, but we'll get through it. It says, when you came through the ranks, F3 and F2, and then later on in Champ Car, which we'll come to, one of the key elements was the different chassis, engines, and tyres. And now it's mainly single make. Do you think you'd have had the career you've had without that element?
Well, I mean, it depends on. I'm not quite sure I understand what he meant, but if that's a good thing or a bad thing, in terms of if you're in the right car. I mean, of course, when you have more choices of chassis, engines and tires, it's crucial that you're in the right one. But at the same time,
you can do more with it.
Back then, at least, was that if the car with the better engine or the better chassis maybe had a different tire that wasn't as good as, let's say, the Michelin or something, so it tended to even out, I always felt, and the longer a series runs on the same set of rules, any opposite, it ends up migrating to one chassis, one engine, and one tire anyway.
Yeah.
Because there's always one that ends up dominating, I mean, like, back in the day when in F3, I mean, it was Reynard for years and years and years and years. Yeah. Same thing in IndyCar, and then all of a sudden Dallara shows up and blow the doors off everybody. So then everybody has to be in a Dallara, so it actually ends up being about the same in the end, it's not that huge of a difference.
Yeah, they just sort of just sort of change, it just sort of goes in a flow.
I mean, the only difference is that, the teams aren't forced like in F1, where the teams theoretically have to build every single part themselves, Obviously, there's off-the-shelf stuff, and although there are, when there's even in IndyCar, for example, chassis competing, there was always development parts, but nowhere near what you have in F1, obviously.
Yeah, sure. He's just finished off. He said that he was at Brands in 1983 when you debuted in the Spirit Honda, and he watched you in Group C there many times. And he says that he's friends with Gary Ailes, who sends his...
Gary, Well, send my regards back to him.
Yeah, there you go. Send it back. No, thank you, Simon. Thank you for that. So that brings us nicely into 1983 F1, the non-championship race at Brands Hatch, which Simon alluded to. It's also Simon's local circuit, and he always likes hearing people's opinions on Brands Hatch. So, the Grand Prix circuit's pretty good, isn't it?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, it was unbelievable, actually. And with those cars, with the 1,500 horsepower turbos in qualifying for the Grand Prix was just mind blowing. It's about as exciting as it gets in a race car, I think.
Really? Wow. Yeah, I think we'd all love to see F1 back at Brands. Obviously, it's not possible with facilities and stuff, but it's just, I mean, that's one of my earliest memories is watching F1 at Brands, and it's just fantastic. It seems crazy these days, but it was brilliant.
Yeah, it really does. But we thought it was pretty good back then, because we didn't have the reference point what they have now. We could only compare to what it was like in the 70s. It was like, oh, those guys are crazy driving those things.
They certainly were. I wasn't around in the 70s, but from what I've seen, yes, crazy. I've just got some notes on the car. It said that it seemed to be quite slow in qualifying, but then when it came to the race, you were right on the tail of, I think it was Arnoux, who was, in terms of time, he was quick, and you weren't far off.
Are you talking about Brands Hatch now, or?
Yeah, I think it was Brands. I've just got, notes. Just said, there was like slow.
Funny actually, because
during the warm up,
it was quite interesting because we showed up. No one had seen our car or the team or anything before, and it was cold because it was the beginning of the year. It was Race of Champions. It was like, I think, March or April or something. and it was just a test session really for us more than anything, to do that race. But and because it was so cold, no one could get any heat in the tires. It was like, I mean, the cars were just like literally couldn't get in it, because our car, on the other hand, was about 150 kilos overweight, I think, at
Oh,
least.
right.
So we
Wow.
actually were blistering some of the tires. But because of that, we had a lot of grip, because we could actually get heat in the tires. So
Oh, right,
first,
yeah.
I think the first practice session, we were actually quickest of all. And I remember Dario Calzavari, who was the team manager for Ferrari at the time, was all of a sudden sniffing around the garage, and I ended up talking to him. And I swear to God, I think that's half the reason I ended up with Ferrari, 3 years later, because
Right.
we kept the dialogue going the whole time since then. We always stayed in touch, and I called, he called me, what happened, and like so on. So we always had a dialogue, from early on for that
Yeah,
reason.
yeah.
But it was only because the freaking car was so heavy, that it was
And it
literally
was just pushing
the hardest compound. It was just like poles like that, and
That's brilliant. I obviously
yeah,
had no idea about that. That's fantastic. It's because the car was too heavy, heating the tires, and he was impressed. Fantastic.
yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. To 83, you persisted with the car. I think the highest result was 7th at Zandvoort on the old Zandvoort circuit, which was just bonkers from what I've seen. For 84, the drive went to Mauro Baldi. What happened there? Were you planning
No,
on
what
being
happened was that Honda left. They went to Williams. So the team had, I mean, I think they went with a Hart engine. They had no financial support anymore, so it ended up being a paying driver basically who could get in the car.
Sure.
And Honda then offered me, just because they felt bad, so they offered me a season in Japan in F2 again.
Yeah.
Just to keep me busy, and do more work. So I ended up going to Japan that year, and drive the F2 car for them with Yokohama tires. And but then I drove everything I can get my hands on that year. I think I did like 39 races that year. So I did the full season in Japan in F2 and Group C. I did the Group C in Europe with Reinhold Jost on the 956 Porsche.
Yes,
The World Championship and the European Championship. And then I did, I replaced Brundle when he got injured with Tyrrell. And then the last 4 races with Tolman. So I was like every weekend, literally, I was in a different part of the world doing a race,
Could you imagine that these days? I mean, say someone like, I don't know, off the top of my head, someone like Alex Albon or something is in DTM. If he was out in Japan and going somewhere else and then sports cars, and it just wouldn't happen, would it?
Well, you say that, but I mean, it's. I mean, Felix, who I also managed, Felix Rosenquist.
Yeah.
He did something similar to that a few years back, because when the whole sort of Mercedes didn't really have much to offer him after he won the Formula 3 championship.
Yeah.
It was like a GT3 car, in the Pro-Am or whatever. And obviously that was a gigantic step backwards. So we ended up going to Japan to do the Super Formula.
Yeah.
And he also did the GT out there. But then the Formula E thing came along as well, and some other races. So, I mean, he was the same. He raced every weekend somewhere for the whole year, literally. And
just putting the work in.
Well, it is a lot of work, but I tell you, it does sharpen you up. I mean, as a driver, it's the best thing you can do, literally. I mean, because you can jump into anything and you're dialed in 3 laps, you're right with the program,
Right.
It's fantastic. I mean, I strongly encourage it to any driver who, is on his way up, to just get your hands on anything you can drive and just
go and race.
Yeah, exactly, because it's the best training you can get.
Yeah, right, brilliant. Obviously, going to come to Felix a bit later on, and some other guy that you manage who's doing quite well. Scott something. Great question from Emma Crawley. We're going to come back to that one. That's in the memory bank. Good evening, John Kane. Thank you for tuning in, as always. You mentioned about Martin Brundle and the Tyrrell, and obviously he had the accident and got injured, and that got you back into the F1 seat. With 84, was that the year where the car turned out to be illegal, so the results didn't stand? Was it that year?
The Tyrrell, you mean?
The Tyrrell, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. but not that it really mattered for. I mean, because we were the only car without a turbo at that point.
Sure, yeah,
So,
yeah,
it was. I mean, it was tough to say the least. Anyway.
yeah,
So the only thing really for me when I jumped in the car was to beat my teammate, which was Stefan Belov, because
yes,
there was pretty good yardstick, which I actually did almost. I think all the races were raced, but
right,
I
right,
actually beat him and I out qualified him. Yeah, so
okay,
which and I think that then got me the ride with Tolman, for the last four races, and then
yes, and
that then got me the drive with Ferrari the following
yeah,
year.
I've seen you got the fourth at Monza in a Tolman. That's pretty good. Yeah, not
Well,
bad.
especially because it stalled on the line, so I got away last of
Yeah,
everybody. I mean, I screwed up basically on getting off the line, and but yeah, it was good. The car was fantastic. The Tolman was just a fantastic car. Yeah, it was
because
Rory Byrne designed. I mean, he's I mean, in my opinion, he's one of the best designers in history, and probably the least acknowledged of all the great designers.
right, sure, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, his name sort of crops up in a few little things, but as you say, he's one of those guys who doesn't get the
Hmm.
doesn't get the recognition. Because when you were at Tolman, you were alongside Ayrton, weren't you? Ayrton
Yeah,
Senna.
yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you can see, obviously, it's Ayrton there in the JPS thing. Obviously,
Yeah,
it was him and Nigel, one with the two guys for me growing up.
yeah,
But what were your sort of? Obviously, you raced against Ayrton a lot, and just want to touch on him. I mean, it was obviously a tragic weekend in
yeah,
Imola with him and Roland, and we spoke with David Brabham, who was a few weeks ago, who was obviously Roland's teammate, and he said it was
yeah.
very, very difficult. What are your memories of Ayrton, both in the car and out of it?
Well, it was an interesting character for sure. Very intense, obviously. And I mean, massively talented driver, obviously. Um, I mean, to some degree, I think almost to his detriment. Just because I think he had a what well, how do I phrase this the right way? So I think the ability to see the bigger picture was probably his weakness, if anything. Because he was so talented, he just wanted to crush everybody at every moment.
Yeah,
And I mean, Alan was obviously his biggest protagonist at the time, and he was the exact opposite. He always took the big picture view, and so you don't have to win every battle to win the war.
yeah,
And that's exactly what he did. And I think he sort of had to recalibrate that attitude a little bit. But I mean, he snookered him completely when he went to Williams. Because he could see the Williams was a much better car, and he went and did a deal
active
very early
suspension.
on with them, and left no room for Ayrton to go there. When the McLaren then turned out to be not the greatest car. For actually a couple of years there when Ayrton
Yeah,
was with them.
yeah, sure.
So but I mean, as far as raw talent, there may never ever be anyone as good as Ayrton was. I don't think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have said that. It's good to hear it from someone who was obviously his teammate, raced with him, raced against
Yeah.
him as well. Because and I think you said about he felt like he had to win every race. I think it was it 88? I think it was in Monaco when he had like
Mm.
almost a 2-minute lead, and it was at Portier, and he put it in the
Yeah.
barrier. He was just trying to break the lap record or something. He didn't need to do it. He just wanted to. Yeah, and that was his thing. And there's a great line again that I've seen on video a few times from Alan, which probably backs up what you said. And Alan said that Ayrton's got a problem. He doesn't think he can kill himself. um,
Yeah.
and he said because obviously he was such a believer in the big guy upstairs, and he just went
Mm.
out full out, and then whatever happens, happens. And obviously sometimes didn't win races that he should have done.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, but having said that, I mean, and that's a common thread with every great driver. They are extremely fast, and they can pull out that little bit extra every time in qualifying. In Ayrton's case, a little bit more than extra sometimes. I mean, like mind blowing extra. But hardly ever did he put a foot wrong. I mean, it was not like he was crashing a lot because he was
No,
trying too hard. He was always in control of the situation, which is, that's what made him so great, I think, in terms of, it was just that the only flaw he had, in my opinion, was that he was just, he had to be the best at every single moment.
Yeah,
You couldn't
he was.
accept anyone beating him.
Yeah, rather than just being a bit sensible, sometimes he just had to go
Yeah.
full out. But as you say, that's what made him so good. That's what made him so memorable as well.
Yeah.
No, good. Thank you for saying about that. 85 back to Tyrrell, alongside Martin Brundle, who's obviously still very much in the F1 circus, Sky Sports and everything. Did you get
Yeah,
on
that
well,
was just
Martin?
that was never meant to be. Even I just went out to Brazil because I was on the contract with Tolman,
Yeah,
but Tolman didn't get the tires that year. It was a big saga with Pirelli and some politics involved and whatever. So Tolman couldn't do the race and they didn't know when they actually could start racing because they had no tires. So I went out there, just to kind of have a look around. But of course, I brought my kit with me just in case. And, you know, 10 to 10 on Friday morning, Ken comes up. Do you have your gear with you? I said, yep. I'll get in the car then, So it's literally 10 minutes before the first practice session.
last minute again.
Because I don't know what happened. Him and Beloff had a falling out over something, So he took Beloff out of the car and put me in the car instead.
I didn't realise that it was that late in the day. I knew something had happened with Beloff, but I didn't realise that it was like 10 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness. That's caught me by surprise.
Yeah.
And obviously, obviously Beloff was another tale of what could have been, obviously, with his passing in Spa, and very sad. He was very good. Now, the amount of people that have asked me about this next bit, obviously you had the one race in Tyrrell, and then you went to Ferrari. Now, you said you had the dialogue from brands and all that was going on. And this has never come out, and I don't even know why I'm going to ask it, because I'm sure you can't say anything. But what happened with René Arnoux? Because René Arnoux got sacked, and no one knows why. And the amount of people that have messaged me saying, ask him, ask Stefan if he knows.
I wish I knew, but honest to God, hand on my heart, I don't know. I have no idea what happened.
Right.
What caused it.
Because
and it's amazing that no one, because I have a lot of friends down there, no one, either they won't say it or they don't know. I don't know which one it is, but
wow.
Yeah.
One of those weird things, because you thought that after all these years, maybe René would come out and say, "Look, this is what happened. I did this or this happened."
I was
there's nothing, is there?
in '88 after that, so I was like, maybe I don't know. Does he have some weird behaviors, that I should be worried about? Or
Ligier, wasn't it? Yeah.
Cool guy. I mean, we had a great time together. He's
wow. Well, there you go, everyone. I did ask about. No one knows. We'll have to get René on.
Yeah.
More questions about 88. Yes. That's a good question. Before we move on, Ken Tyrrell, Ron Dennis, and Enzo Ferrari. Were there any similarities between them? That's a good question. I like that.
Well, not huge similarities, really. I mean, they all obviously. Well, the one similarity they all had is that they all wanted to win. They had a burning desire to win.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I mean, they were quite different in their approach to things.
Yeah.
And I mean, particularly Ron. And because Ron sort of moved the goalpost for everybody really when he came into Formula One. The attention to detail and just always racing the game a little bit more each year was, if it wasn't the cars, it was the presentation, the motorhomes, or it was always kind of up the game a little bit and everybody had to follow, of course,
Yeah, right. Yeah, he was the man. Questions more. We've got another one from Viv, another one from Robert. We're going to come to those in a moment. They are on the list, so that's all fine. In that line of team bosses, ask him how Van Rossum fits in. And he's got a laughing face, and I don't know what that's all about. I'm not sure.
Van is a huge Onyx fan, and he's from Belgium, which was also Van Rossum's home country. So, I mean, he was a character, extreme character, but a good man at the end of the day. I mean, he had a good heart, and he always did what he promised to do, although it took a while to make it happen. But he, and he really, without him, I think the team would have never been, actually.
Right. Right.
So he
So he's in
put
there.
the money where his mouth was, but it was a very entertaining and interesting ride for a year, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We're going to come to that. He said, "Oh yeah, Vim has said that Van Rossum is a legend." There we go. Yeah, we're going to come to him.
Like Sven said, I mean, you could literally write a book just about that season and all the stuff that went on. It was pretty wild.
When I come to that one very soon. Just want to go back to Ferrari quickly. Obviously, you got the call saying that Ferrari wanted you, I assume. I mean, I don't know how your kind of mind works, but if that was me and I was a racing driver and I got a phone call from Ferrari, I'd have just been excited, nervous, everything. How did you feel? Obviously, because you went to meet Enzo, I assume, and how did you feel when you signed for Ferrari? Obviously, probably the biggest name in motorsport, almost.
Yeah, well, it was kind of surreal, the whole thing, because it happened so fast as well. Again, typical how it always seemed to be in my career. You sort of struggling and fighting year after year, just picking up whatever get your hands on to show what you can do. And then all of a sudden I get a call from Marco Piccinini, and I lived in London at the time, on a Monday, the week before the Portugal Grand Prix. So I guess it was a week after the Brazilian Grand Prix, or 10 days after the Brazilian Grand Prix, or whatever. And he said, can you come to the Savoy this afternoon, like 4 o'clock or whatever? I said, yeah, sure, of course I can. So I went there, and he said, well, we'd like to offer you to drive for the rest of the year. I'm like, well, so
I guess you didn't have to think too much about that.
I'm under contract with Tolman, so I obviously have to, make sure that, they're okay to release me and everything. And I called Alex Hawkridge up, and of course he said, not of course, he very kindly said, of course we're not going to stop you going to Ferrari, that's every driver's dream, so I mean, we'll let you go for sure, so that cleared it up, and then literally we sort of discussed the details in the contract and everything. It didn't take very long, and then I flew down to Maranello on, when was it? The next day, I think. Yeah, the next afternoon.
Oh, that quick.
Yeah, I flew to Bologna, got picked up there, and then had a meeting with Enzo Ferrari at the old factory in Modena.
Yeah.
No, it was all top secret. No one knew about this, and which was, I mean, like everything with Ferrari is like a Fellini movie. It's like, so I don't think it's never meant to be that way. It's just how it was all the time. So we go in this old factory that hasn't been used for probably 30, 40 years already then,
Wow.
And you walk through this sort of hallway, with photographs of Sterling Moss, Nuvolari, Fangio, all my heroes, and
wow.
I got goosebumps just walking through the hallway, and the lights coming through the window, because it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, when we met. And, no lights are on. It's all dark. I go into this office where Mr. Ferrari sits in the back of the room, and all you can see is his silhouette in the back,
The proper Godfather.
Yeah, for real. I mean, that's how it was, Then Marco was there, and Piero Ferrari, his son.
Wow.
And they were talking back and forth in Italian, and sort of this and that, translating. And then Mr. Ferrari said, "Are you hungry?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm starving," but I figured that's probably not what he meant. No, I've never been more hungry in my life. I said, and he goes, "Oh, okay, you're hired." He goes, and then that was it.
Wow.
We went off to the factory to just jump in Michele's seat, and we did about 5 laps the next day at Fiorano, just to literally learn whether, not that there was many buttons to worry about back then, but just to, and then we flew off to Portugal for the Portuguese Grand Prix the next day.
Wow, that's crazy! Wow, that's amazing.
Thrown in the deep end, but it was, I mean, it changed my life from that moment on.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And wow, meeting Enzo Ferrari, crikey. Ira Sokolova. I'm sorry, I don't speak Russian. I don't know what that says, Ira. I'm very sorry. I'll comment in Russian now. Sorry. You can translate, that'd be great. So the car, 85, I remember it just looking really, really cool. It was one of the earliest cars I remember seeing, and it just looked like a great car. Did it feel good? Did it feel like a different level to anything else, just because with Ferrari and the facilities? Did it?
It was never a great car to drive in terms of comfort, but it was quick, which, it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as the car is quick, you that's all you want. You put up with, a bit nervous and twitchy and edgy. It's a bit harder to get it in the window where you needed it to be. But the engine was very powerful, especially in the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And so overall, the car was very fast for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it was. I mean, did you ever think in the early first few laps that you did you ever allow yourself to think, bloody hell, I'm driving a Ferrari? Did you ever that?
Honestly, you forget that pretty quick. Because once you strap your helmet on, and pull this, it doesn't matter what car you're in. It could be a John Deere tractor. You do everything you can to win. It's that's all out of the picture at that point.
Yeah.
It's just you just totally think about what to do with the car and all the stuff you go through all the time. Talking to your engineers, and just it's like a process. You go through, and that could be anything at that point. It doesn't really matter.
No, sure. I mean, because I did a track day in a Ferrari, and I just had to sit for 30 seconds and just look at the steering wheel with a badge on it. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm really doing this. Obviously, you're a racing driver, you don't get that. But so 85, again, I'll have a sort of quick look through. It was pretty competitive. Had a couple of podiums, Montreal and Detroit, which must have felt good, standing on a podium Ferrari.
Well, it did, but it didn't feel that good because I actually should have won both of them.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up.
Team orders in Montreal, which I absolutely 100% would have won.
At
that point, because I was miles. I mean, I was catching Michele about second a lap, And, And then in Detroit, I was ready to pass kicking, and the front brake rotor blew up.
Oh,
so I did the last two laps without any brakes. I mean, literally, I just about scraped through the corner, and I just had to crawl to the finish.
Yeah. Because that was that was a street circuit, wasn't it? And a street circuit with no brakes doesn't sound fun.
Well, it's not fun anywhere, but it's So
wow. But just a quick word about Michele. Obviously, we very sadly lost him as well. I mean, I don't like to talk about these things for too long, but we spoke to David Brabham about Michele, and spoke to Danny Sullivan about Michele as well. And he said that he was just a lovely guy and a really, really great driver. And I guess you'd go along with that.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I mean, I raced against Michele, from back in the Formula 3 days. And then so we kind of knew each other already quite well, and I mean, he was fast, and he was a good teammate. Of course, you always try to beat your teammate, so there was always a level of rivalry, but it was a very good and open rivalry. We were sharing most things, in a very open, and I always had that attitude to any teammate, rather than trying to be sneaky and tricky and hide stuff. Always felt like you actually get more out of being open and honest, and then whoever gets it right on the day is going to be quicker anyway. That's just how it works out. I mean, it's
it's a healthy way to be, isn't it? It's the best way to be.
Michele was good. I mean, we ended up following each other literally to his last moment, because after the Ferrari adventure, we then ended up being teammates in Arrows for a few races.
Yes.
And we did a Daytona 24 hours in the first race Ferrari did with the 333.
Yeah.
And
he was there. It was with him.
And we won Le Mans together, and then we
did come to that
together. So we kind of just, so we were like sort of brothers in the end. It was
shadowing each other.
Yeah. He was a good guy. Great.
Yeah, and obviously a real shame with his passing. Just want to jump into 1986. I've got the picture of the car here. Every time I read about the car, everyone just says it wasn't very competitive. It didn't look as good as the previous one. Was the car that bad? I mean, because the results didn't seem to be too bad in 86.
Yeah, I never forget it, because we both, me and Michele, were called down to the factory, before the first test, and we to see the car for the first time because we hadn't seen it at that point, And we sort of go into this room and they pull the covers of it. Then we both looked at each other and like, oh, fuck, this is going to be a long year. You could tell that it just wasn't, the car just didn't look right,
It's kind of stuck on the wall here. I've got a picture stuck on the wall here. It's on with you, but I can't take it off. But it's been described as looking a bit fat from the front. Is that because it does look a bit round?
I mean, that huge sort of engine cover, which there was really no need for back then because there was no air intake on the top, so it was just an odd, but it just was never alive, the car. We sort of managed to get it somewhere close in a couple of races, here and there, but overall it was a tough car.
Sure. And it's everything I read about it, it seems to get slated. I just wanted to see if it was that bad, but it seems.
Yeah, I mean, my only was again, that year was to beat my teammate in the championship because that's all we could go for, which I ended up doing. But but it was, there was no hope of challenging for the championship.
No, sure. This is a question that actually came up earlier on today. It was over on Instagram. Had a message sent across, and I've done a bit of research and I've found out the answer. But I want to ask you it first. Firstly, how did you come to wear Nigel Mansell's crash helmet in Detroit? And the other question was, did you keep it?
No. Well, what happened was that back then in Detroit, the garages were like halfway down on the track at the other end of the track. So they used to bring all the equipment over to the pit lane, and the mechanics forgot my helmet in the garage.
All right.
Like, 2 minutes to go before you strap your helmet. Like, where's the helmet? And I'm like, sorry. And so Nigel was parked next to us. So I, ran up to Nigel and he had a spare one, so I borrowed that for the session.
Right. So you just borrowed it for that one, yeah. Because, I mean, I'd forgotten about that, to be honest. I completely forgot it happened, but no, it was, I think someone said that your luggage got rediverted at the wrong airport and that kind of stuff. But I thought that sounds.
No, that was a different. That was at Montreal when I used Johnny's helmet, Johnny Herbert's.
Right. We'll have a word to the guy who's in charge of the helmets.
Yeah, exactly.
Slap on the wrist. This is something that I do remember at the time. I remember at the end of the year, end of '86. You're told that Ferrari were going to let you go, even though you'd outperformed Michele in terms of results and standings and that. And I always remember Murray Walker and James Hunt saying that they were keeping the wrong driver, saying that you should have, stayed on. But obviously he was Italian and had the backing and everything. But what happened there with leaving Ferrari? Because
it was. I was been talking to Ron Dennis for a while, and McLaren was obviously a far better choice at the time. They won the championship, and we ended up doing it. So it was kind of both ways, really,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just.
Oh. Hang on a moment, we've just dropped out. We're going to come back in. There we are. Sorry, slight internet glitch somewhere there. Oh, well, Stefan has vanished. He is in a hotel in Stockholm at the moment, so maybe he needs to put 20p or something in or 50 crowns or whatever they have out in Sweden. But he's going to come back very soon, hopefully. I'm just going to keep an eye on the messages. So apologies for that. Stefan has just left the building for the time being. So I'm just going to sit here and wait, and I'm going to keep an eye on things because we're just coming to the end of his time in F1, and then we're going to move on to IndyCar and Le Mans, and then some artwork that he's been doing. So we're just going to. I'm just going to sit here, wait, and it sounds as though he is back. Hang on, I'm going to press the button.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
I don't know what happened. The hotel is a bit sketchy here. Something kind of just.
Yeah, I did say that. Oh, we're in you've got hotel Wi-Fi, so there's probably.
Sorry about that.
You have to put some a few pennies in the meter.
I'll go and tell the hurdy-gurdies downstairs in a minute when we're down here.
It's no, all good. So yeah, no problem. So 87 into McLaren. I want to get on to the end of the year fairly shortly. Obviously, there was rumours going around that they wanted Ayrton at that point, but he was under contract with Lotus, and there was all kinds of wranglings and things. But obviously, you were talking to Ron, and you got into the seat. What were your sort of hopes going into McLaren? Because as you said, it was a better option at the time. Did you think you could have a really good shot at the title here, or was it in a development process?
That was the hope, that I was going to be able to, run up front and have a go at the championship. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
As it were, I mean, the timing was, it was better than the Ferrari, mind you, but the timing still wasn't great, because even Prost had a really bad year. I mean, he was fourth in the championship. I ended up sixth, and 15 points behind him or something, So it was a tough year for both of us and the team,
Yeah, sure.
A lot of reliability issues with the tag engine, and it was kind of at the end of its development, I think.
Because that the Porsche tag. Sorry, yeah. I did have a quick look, and there was a few retirements and reliability issues, as you say. But there's sort of two famous incidents, I suppose, in '87. Everyone, well, certainly I remember. Firstly, at Hockenheim, I actually put a post out about it because as you know, the old Hockenheim circuit, or the one that was in use at the time, it's not a short lap, and there's not a lot of room to maneuver. It's all sort of trees and everything. But you came home on 3 wheels, and there's just that great picture of you with the arm up and coming across the line. Because was it just going? Did you feel something wrong with the tyre beforehand, or did it just go?
It went pretty quickly, yeah. I mean, they always do. When they're delaminated, you don't get any warning. It just goes poof, and then the thing just separates. It's with, a matter of a second, 2 at the most, and then it's in pieces, basically.
Wow.
So, and it delaminated, and I think the first chicane, on that last lap, and then I sort of 3-wheeled it back to the finish line.
Wow. Because obviously Nelson was away, wasn't he? Piquet went off and won it, and Ayrton was behind you. But one thing I do remember is the cheer when you went over the line. It was just it was like even bigger than the one it was even bigger than the one that Piquet had. It's just very cool just to get around the whole circuit, 3 wheels, and bring it home. Yeah, that's great.
Definitely, exciting at the time. Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure. Yeah, it must have been a bit lively, keeping hold of it. But just want to come on to the second incident in a moment. Like Tony Organ, I hope that's pronounced correctly. 87, he said that you only had 30 laps in the McLaren before the season, and after that, Prost did all the testing, and you only drove during race week.
Yeah, I think that is true, actually. Yeah, because I think at that point, Ron had already kind of agreed verbally with Ayrton. So it was in his best interest to kind of
88.
Yeah, for 88, yeah. To make sure that it didn't go too well.
Right.
I was a Marlboro guy, had been throughout my career pretty much, and then Ayrton was a Camel driver, so there was some pushback from Philip Morris at the time, I think.
Sure.
More guys, and then so it was, one of those things you had to sort of make sure that everything was going to plan, But I kind of sort of knew that something like that might happen, but I still felt it was a better option, because if I'd done well and finished in the top 2 or 3 in the championship, I would have left more options open.
Yeah, of course.
Following year, So,
oh, sure. Fair enough. Just want to come on to Austria. That was a bit of a lively weekend in '87. Obviously, it's probably one of the things that you're very quite well known for. Was it Friday qualifying at the Österreichring, now the Red Bull Ring? The deer. I mean, when I guess it was just like, was it a blink of an eye thing? Because You came
Well,
around
not even that,
on the
I
middle
mean,
section
because
of the corner.
back then Österreichring was so fast all the
Yeah,
time.
it was before they'd shortened it now, haven't
And
they?
you
And
come over that brow there, you're already doing about 320 clicks probably. I mean, it's fifth gear basically, full stick in fifth gear, and you go just not airborne, but you go light, just but you come over the brow, and you point at the roof of the marshal's post is your only point of reference. That's where you're pointing the car at, and then you get on top, and then you kind of land, and then you're on the right trajectory to go down, So when all this happened, the deer was just standing there in the middle of the road. I mean, the signal didn't even go from my brain to my foot to hit the brake pedal. It just went slap. And luckily, it hit on the left side and not in the middle.
Yeah.
Because had it hit in the middle, it would have taken my head off instantly, I think. Because it literally, although it was a very small deer, I mean, it was tiny, it ripped the whole left suspension out of its pickup point. It was just 4 gaping holes where the suspension mounts were.
Wow.
The whole lot, through the carbon, ripped the carbon out, the whole lot. And then it took everything with it, the left radiator, the left rear. So there was no steering, no brakes, nothing. And wet grass on the outside because it was the morning practice. So it literally, as soon as you hit the grass, you accelerate and you don't slow down, So it's
and obviously you came to
massive accident. I mean,
yeah, well, we
luckily it kind of spun around a little bit, so it hit from the back rather than the front.
Right.
Otherwise, it would have, probably done my legs in,
Wow.
But I broke 3 ribs actually, so I was in massive, excruciating pain the whole weekend. From.
I'm sure. I mean, because there's that picture of you out of the car afterwards, and you're sort of, even with your helmet on, you seem to be looking back at the car, going, "What the hell just happened?"
Yeah. No, it was. It was just. I mean, it was just so much weird stuff going on that whole weekend. Then with Billy Dungle, who was the sort of physiotherapist the team had, who was also Nicky Lauda's guy back in the day.
Right.
He was from Austria, so he managed to find a little house on the other side of the just behind the Os curve. So you had to go outside the track and then go up there, and he had a little treatment because back then, the teams didn't have like freaking dedicated rooms for massages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he said, get on back on my moped and we'll drive up there, and I'll start working on you. This is after the practice is over and everything on Friday. And we're tootling along on his moped, and some piss drunk German or Austrian fan comes up and he decides to hit Willie, because he's on a moped where everybody's walking. So he lashes out at Willie, and I didn't see this because I'm behind Willie. So Willie ducks, trying to avoid him, and he hit the clock. Again, I didn't even have time to blink, and he just got me right. I mean, absolutely floored on the ground. I mean, like, what else could go wrong?
So fairly sort of boring Friday, really.
Yeah. So anyway, we ended up. Eventually, I came back. I was like, I had 5 rounds with Mike Tyson by the time I got to the house.
God.
And then on the race, the wheel came off. Of course, Ron was holding the paddle. As the team principal did in those days. And he lifted the paddle, and of course, as soon as the paddle is up, you go. And he didn't see one of the guys on the right rear still had the gun in the wheel, so I took off with the gun, and the thing got tangled in the back end somehow, and followed all the way down the pit lane. It must have passed like 5 garages at least, and the tube probably was like that thin, just stretched out to like, and then it's came loose and snapped, and it must have traveled back through the pit lane about 200 miles an hour.
Like a rocket.
Like a miracle it didn't kill someone on the way back to the McLaren pit.
God.
Yeah, and then the wheel came off as soon as I left the pit lane. The wheel was off, so I had to crawl back on 3 wheels again. And it's just a nightmare.
God. Yeah. And saying about the race as well, that was the year where there was 3 starts, and there was all the pileups, and there was the one where Brundle hit Cheever, because there was one where Brundle crashed in the Legionnaire and the Zach speed. They went in, and you started again, and Mansell got away slowly, and all hell
Yeah,
broke loose. I mean,
it was
also, I guess there was nothing you could do about that on the
yeah,
second start. It was just one of those things.
yeah,
Because the circuit was narrow, wasn't it?
yeah.
It was a
Very.
really narrow circuit, and there was there's a big pile of cars, and it just age 6. I just looked at it and thought, what the hell has happened there?
Yeah.
It was just one of those. Yeah, it was like no one had anywhere to go, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, once if it goes wrong in the front, and the whole pack comes up, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, yeah, fair one. Wow, lively time in Austria. This is another question that came in during the week. 1988, there was talk about you possibly going to Williams. Was that ever sort of close?
There was some very light discussions going on, but it was never really, it wasn't really going anywhere. And then, Ligier came up with an offer, at the end of the year. And, I figured, I mean, that's, it's a step backwards, but at least it'll keep me in the game,
Yeah, it's
and,
a drive.
But as it were, that car was, Rena and we used to joke, so that aerodynamics by Isaac Newton, because that kept it on the ground was gravity.
Yeah, I've actually got that line. Yeah, the only thing keeping it down was gravity. Because it was a weird looking thing. I mean, it looked slim and sleek and everything.
Well, I felt sorry for Michel too, the designer, because I think he sat with Guy Ligier at one sort of lunchtime, and just came through this idea out without really thinking it through very well, about splitting the fuel tank, between half the fuel tank between the engine and the gearbox and the other one in the front. And he's like, yes. And he's like, every hour after that, he's like, you better, like really. So the car was an absolute disaster, It's like, yeah.
Was it that bad? Was it really?
It really was. I mean, we knew the first 3 laps we did in the car and the first test we did, it was like, oh God, this.
What are we doing?
Well, any car you drive, you know it within the first 10 laps whether it's going to be any good or not.
Yeah. Emma Crawley, she just said, I remember you saying you wanted to set fire to it. It was so bad.
I might have said that in some weak moment.
Yeah. Chris McMahon, said the Ligier was quite pretty until they added that horrid airbox on the back.
Yeah.
The big hump thing.
It got a little bit better at the end of the year when they added a massive big front wing on it, which did help a bit, for sure.
Yeah, sure. So thereafter, this is the bit people are going to want. Onyx. Obviously, I remember when the car first came out, and I was 8 at the time, and I looked at it and I just thought, that is a brilliant looking car. I mean, it looked fantastic. I mean, how did that move come about to Onyx?
So, well, I knew the people really well. I knew Mike from the F2 days, Mike Earl, and I knew Alan Jenkins really well because he was with Ron when I drove for Ron in F3, and then followed Ron to. So when it's quite funny. It's when 1980 when I was driving for Ron with Project 4, there was this room, sort of this little mezzanine level at the shop, where we ran the Formula 3 and the Formula 2 cars. And they used to call it the fish tank. And it was this sort of blacked out windows. And these 3 characters were sitting up there cooking up some stuff, whatever they were doing. And it was John Barnard, Alan Jenkins, and Steve Nichols. Yeah, so 3 of the greatest designers in Formula 1 history, basically. Yeah. And they were designing the F1 car with the carbon fiber tub. Wow. So that, Ron then obviously worked his deal. I don't know the details of it, but, to try to get the McLaren deal. And that's when they then did the MP4, which was the first ever carbon fiber race car, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. So, but anyway, coming back to Onyx. So Alan I knew really well. And we kept in touch throughout all the years, when Ron went on to do the McLaren thing, I went on to do F2, and then F1 with various teams. But we were always in contact. So, and that played a big part of it because I knew, obviously that he was very capable, and I knew Mike really well, and he was, always ran fantastic teams, very slick operations in every category he was involved in. and then they added lots of good people, and then so last race of the year in Adelaide, this other fellow who sort of came in as an investor um, came up, and we basically really shook hands on the deal there, and then that's how it all went down, basically.
And it all came together.
Yeah.
But now, you are alongside JJ Lato. Now, we spoke with Steve Soper a few years
Well,
ago.
JJ didn't come in till very late in the year.
He came in later on, yeah. Steve said he was he was probably the most naturally talented driver he'd ever raced with, especially in sports cars. Just wondering what your thoughts on JJ were.
Yeah, no, he was a terrific talent, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot happened before we got to that point. With Gasho, of course, was my teammate in the beginning, but but everything with the team and everything too. So
yeah. I mean, obviously, from a few sort of comments and what we've known about Onyx and everything, it just sounds like it was fun. Should we say? Was it? What was it like that year? Because obviously you began by not.
I wouldn't say it was fun because it was really hard work. I mean, because it was on the limit the whole time. Financially, and just with with the resources and trying to. Well, but most of all, the pre-qualifying was just brutal.
Yeah.
Every race, and it wasn't like. It was 12 cars that had to pre-qualify for 4 places.
Yeah.
And they were all real. I mean, any one of those 4 very often ended up in the top 10.
Right.
In the real qualifier. I mean, it was Brabham, it was us, it was what do you call the Italian lot, it was very good too. So I mean, they were all really, really good teams,
Yeah. And it was always close, wasn't it?
Italia, I think it was, yeah. So that was like pressure beyond anything I've ever experienced to this day.
Really?
I mean, maybe in the qualifying it's on the same level, but I mean, I remember and it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, the session. So you used to arrive at the track, like it's 6:30 in the morning, and you just basically walk through the garage and growl at everybody, because you're just like so wound up, and ready to just had to get it done in that hour,
Yeah.
And most of the time the track was damp and dirty and shitty, and it was really hard. If you made it through, the rest of the day was just junk. You couldn't even think straight, so it's like the rest of the 2 practice sessions on Friday was a total waste of time because you were so just drained mentally from getting through the first bit,
Wow. That's the thing, obviously they don't have pre-qualifying now, and it's not been there for a while. And I think a lot of people don't realise, what went on. It was just, I mean, well, Emma Crawley, she just said that it was a hateful thing, pre-qualifying. It was just a horrible thing.
It was awful. Yeah, I mean, it really, really was. And then we missed the second half of the season because of which we shouldn't really have done. But I can't remember what happened at Silverstone, but. Anyway, long story short, we had to live with it the whole year, but we still ended up being top 10 in the championship and a podium, which I don't think any team to this day has done in this first year.
Well, again, that was something that was a post that was put out during the week. It was, Onyx got on the podium. And obviously there was strong running in France as well in the race. I think it was like Jean Loacy's first race.
The car was fantastic. I mean, it was a great car. The bones of the car was really good. It's just in the beginning, obviously, we had a lot of reliability issues.
Sure.
But the car was really good. And had we been able to develop it, the following year, I think it would have been, with a proper budget, I think it would have been really good.
Oh, right. Okay. Just want to go on that quick podium because it was at Estoril, wasn't it? You came third. And that was a race you didn't do any pit stops. Was
it planned it that way?
Was that the plan? Because a lot of the cars were overheating, weren't they?
Well, that too, maybe. But I mean, Alan and I, we sort of figured we have to do something different here, to try to make something happen. And I learned this earlier on, actually, with the Ferrari more than anything, with the Goodyear guys, that if you just run it for like 2 laps on Friday morning and then let them sit, and then do the same thing on Saturday morning. So you put, just a tiny heat cycle in them, and then you just let them sit for the race.
Right.
So they cure that a little bit, to enough to A, not blister, which they did sometimes, and B, they have a little bit. If you really, really look after them, you can make them, last a lot longer. So that's what that was our strategy from the beginning. So, we qualified pretty decent. I think 12th or something like that. And if I qualified 12th or better, I always felt, I had a podium on the cards, because I could race quite well, typically, even like with a Ferrari or whatever. So that was the game plan from the beginning. So, just try to, really looked after the tires early on the full tank, especially.
Right.
And of course, but the last sort of 10 laps, it was down to this literally steel core on the left front, because that long right-hander, and I could see it. I mean, I could see this silver thing, almost sparks coming off the outside of the tire.
Wow.
But it held together, thank God. So we got our podium.
Yeah, I mean, again, I do remember it pretty well, and it was just like, I think everyone at the time was just saying. I think even Murray Walker said, "Absolutely fantastic," Onyx on the podium, and yeah, it was very, very popular moment. Very, very good. Move on to 1990. I mean, what happened? What happened? Because I've read there was a disagreement with Mr. Monteverdi. Was that a thing? Did that happen?
At the end of Onyx thing there?
Yeah, right at the end of
Johansson just, couldn't continue for whatever reason. Then obviously the whole thing was in disarray, and we were scrambling to try to get enough money to to keep it going, basically. And this Monteverdi fellow came in at the very last minute. I think we'd already done the first race of the season, actually, in Brazil, and then he came in the week after that somehow. And I remember I got a call from him, saying, well, I'm not going to pay you anything. And I said, well, we probably need to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, just a bit.
He said, well, I'm not going to pay anything. So if you're not going to drive for free, then you're fired. And then he just hung up the phone. So but I mean, not that it really bothered me, to be honest, because I knew at that point it was over anyway.
Yeah.
And then he put what's his name in Wojtek,
Wojtek,
who came with money through, because his dad and Wojtek's dad were good friends, I think.
Right.
So that was the end of that, which was really a shame, because it was in some ways the most gratifying year I had in F1, because it was a bunch of mates that got together and did this thing, and we all fought like hell to make it happen, and make it work, and everybody did their part to really make it happen. And what we did with the resources we had, and everything was extraordinary, really. I mean,
absolutely.
It's a terrific car, and great guys in the team, and yeah, so it was a shame, really, that we couldn't carry on. But the story with Van Rossen was legendary. I mean, that's just like unbelievable.
I can tell from the look on your face, you still think back to it and have a big old smile about it.
Yeah,
which is great. Just really quickly jump to footwork. That famously heavy Porsche engine and low on power. Was it that bad? Because remember there was some footage of, I think it might have been Michele going through the tunnel at Monaco, and you can almost see him going sort of, come on.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, it was a lot of weird stuff going on too, So I came in last minute. I was actually out in Japan doing some testing for McLaren when I got a call from Alan, who was then the technical director at Arrows after the Onyx deal went to pieces. And I flew straight to Montreal. That's when I ended up with Johnny's helmet, because my luggage disappeared. So, again, just got thrown in the deep end in the first practice session. But I remember we started next to each other, Michele and I, he was right in front of me. and coming back on the first lap into the the chicane before the start finish.
Yeah.
Michaela just went straight on,
Hit the wall.
like with everything locked up. And then as soon as I hit the brakes, same thing. Both of us throttle stuck wide open. You know, full throttle. I mean, it was like so I had a little bit more time to gather my shit together because I see Michaela was in trouble, so I kind of backed out of maybe 10 yards earlier than I would have done normally.
Yeah.
I managed to save it. He got it all sideways and ended up in the pit lane somehow.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Wow. Not the best.
Well, there's another funny story with that. So we did. We then later on we did some testing at Magny-Cours before the race there, and they wanted me to do a race simulation, a full tank run basically.
Right.
So they send me out, did the first lap, warm up lap, and then you go basically, and it started misfiring. So it was only running on 11 cylinders, so I kind of backed off as I'm coming in. It's not running properly. So I crawled around, and sort of cruised around, and I came into the pit lane. I could feel something smell a little bit weird. So I switched it off and just rolled back into the garage. And they started, taking the engine cover off and everything. And you could really smell something burning, something bad. And what had happened was there was a spark sensor on the last cylinder facing the rear bulkhead of the, where the fuel tank is basically, bulkhead, then the engine.
Yeah.
And the spark sensor had come out. So the spark from that last cylinder was just going through this hole and just burning through the whole back of the tub into the fuel tank. It had worked its way all the way through the tub, and it was, excuse me, working its way through the fuel tank. So I had the engine on another 2 seconds, I probably would have still, 30 years later, would have still trajecting towards, probably past the moon at this point, I mean, crazy.
Heading out towards Jupiter somewhere.
I remember driving back to the airport, and all of a sudden it kind of dawns on you, like what actually could have happened. I'm like, holy shit, this could have been a bad one.
The whole thing could have gone.
Yeah.
Goodness me. Wow.
Yeah.
That would have certainly woken you up a bit. Obviously, just like throughout the 80s, you were doing some sports car racing. I want to come to that very shortly. But you moved over to IndyCar, which I've been a huge fan of IndyCar for a long time and still am. Obviously, that was quite a big move. How did it come about? Because it was for Bettenhausen, wasn't it? Bettenhausen Racing.
Yeah. Well, so again, it kind of started when I was driving for Ferrari already, because Ferrari threatened to leave F1 and go IndyCar, I think in '86. So they actually had a car built, and the team that was going to run it was Steve Horn, True Sports Racing, who then became Tasman, when Steve Horn was running it. So I got to meet Steve, and so I knew him a little bit, and we just kind of met a few times like that, and then after that whole saga, and then I said, Formula, I was kind of burnt out with F1 at that point. And I went over to have a look at a couple of races, and it looked really fun and exciting, the whole IndyCar thing.
Yeah.
So I did a test with Steve, with his team, and it went quite well, but they didn't have any space for the following year because they had both drivers signed up already.
Sure.
And then he called me right after Indy, in '92. Maybe give Tony Bettenhausen a call, because I think he's looking to shake up the team a little bit. He hadn't qualified for Indy that year because he was driving himself, Tony, and he might be interested in to put you in the car for a race or two, on the road courses.
Okay.
I thought, it's not the best team out there, but it could be a way to get a foot in the door at least,
Yeah.
So I did, so again, I fly out there. We, like 3 days before the Detroit Grand Prix, and we went to Putnam Park, which is a little track outside of Indianapolis,
right,
and did about 10 shakedown laps, and that was it, and then we loaded up as it were, not even a transporter. They had a pickup truck with a little trailer behind it. One full-time employed mechanic, and that was it. That was the team,
One.
and a bunch of
Wow.
mates, yeah. So it's so different from what I was used to in Formula One.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And we show up at Detroit, and I qualified, I think, 8th or something like that, and we ended up 3rd in the race.
Yeah, podium on the debut.
I guess that's me driving this car. He said, I think I'm never going to get in this car again. And he never did, as it were. So I stayed
That was
the
it.
rest of that year, and then I stayed with him for the next 5 years.
Yeah. So it had long there, and you had you drove alongside Scott Sharp, who was obviously sort of very good. And I'll just a quick run through. I mean, you've had sort of 3rd in Vancouver, 4th in Cleveland, Surfers Paradise in Phoenix and Cleveland, Nazareth. I mean, as you said, it wasn't the biggest team, wasn't the best team, but you got some good results.
I could have gone. I mean, I spoke to Penske a little bit even after '93, and then because we ran Penske's cars, so we had a little bit of help from Penske, and then we were the only other team except Penske who ran that chassis.
Right.
But we always ran the year-old car, so we're obviously way behind on development, but Jim Hall was very interested too. But I just at that point, I kind of felt like I just want to enjoy my racing, and be with people that I enjoy being around, and just have a good time with it,
I guess you felt settled there as well.
Yes. I mean, rather than going to another, because not that I mean, I'm sure it would have been great with Jim Hall, and the results for sure would have been a lot better. But I just felt good there, and they were like family, everybody, and I was just, and I love Tony to death. He was one of the best people I've ever met in my life. Actually, he was just a great guy.
Ah, lovely. Just a quick one. Chris McMahon had a great insight about the Porsche. I heard Footwork weighed a DFR at the factory alongside a Porsche just to prove how heavy it was. Just to say that it was a heavy engine.
Yeah. Well, I think they did. Yeah.
Wow. Emma Crawley says, I remember you finding out you'd gone to IndyCar when I read it in Autosport while on the top deck of a bus going to college in Bradford. That sounds glamorous.
Great. On
a bus in Bradford. Wonderful. Nothing against Bradford. Just very quickly, I wanted to just get your thoughts about the Indy 500. As I said, I was supposed to be out there this year and I haven't. It certainly is like number one on my motorsport bucket list, and I want to go there. And I've asked a few guys about this. So like David Brabham never drove there, but he loved the atmosphere, and obviously Mario drove there many, many, many times, and Danny Sullivan's won there, as has Ari, and all these. Is it just something completely different to anything else, the Indy 500? Because back then it was like a whole month process, wasn't it, with the qualifying and time trials and the draft and all that. What are your memories of the Indy 500? Because you've done 3, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's an individual race. I think it's the best in the world. I mean, nothing. It's just the history, the whole process, the system they use, for qualifying, everything is just great. I mean, the qualifying at Indy is like, that's the ultimate for a racing driver, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
and out, so literally the car is like right on the ragged edge, and you got to pull 4 laps together. That's what makes it so difficult.
Yeah,
you can do 1, when the tires are fresh, you can do, but to do the 4, and the car's just starting to go away from you, sort of end of lap 2, starting to move a bit more, and then lap 3, it's a bit more, lap 4, you're just hanging on for dear life, you
just want to get to the end.
Yeah, exactly, and it's this mind game the whole time, because the grip, it's actually quite easy to be flat if the car is balanced, but you don't know that until
you're flat.
So what happens often is through practice, you kind of feather a bit, the car's dancing around, and you sort of, not quite sure if you're going to be able to keep your foot down, so you always kind of just feathering ever so lightly, and then it comes qualifying, and you're like, and then you go and you just keep your foot down. Of course, it understeers like a pig, because now the car is like stable, because every time you lift ever so slightly, the center of pressure moves, and the car gets all squirrely and weird, so it's like it's an absolute mind game for 1 month, basically, and
Wow.
you just drain. I mean, they call it the year of May, and it's for a reason. I mean, because you felt like you've been there for a year when it's over, Yeah.
I mean, it's good about you say about the technical side of it, the balance of the car and coming off and getting the, pressure and the gravity, and you get push and the gust of wind and all that kind of stuff. It's the technicalities that people who perhaps don't know about the Indy 500, they don't think about that. They just think, it's just going around in circles really fast, which could not be further from the truth.
No, it changes.
Everyone I've spoken to
Every
just loved
corner
it.
is different, you think they're all the same, but they're never the same.
Yeah.
And the wind changes by 5 degrees, and you can have the best car in the world, and it's undrivable. All of a sudden, the same thing. The temperature goes up by 5 degrees, you're hooked up like there's no tomorrow, and then the car just you can't even drive it. It's like constant battle all the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's we spoke to like Willie T. Rebs last week, which was an experience. And he just said the same. He just said the qualifying at Indy. He said he felt quite calm when he was ready to go, but once he got into that lap, I think it was 91 when he, that famous session that he put in, and he said when he was doing it, he said the first and second laps were just the best laps he's ever done in his life because he was just focused on it, and he said it was just the most amazing experience. And I can't wait to get out there just to watch. So whatever it's like to drive,
it's very special. I mean, it really is, But not only, I mean, and then the crowd, I mean, on race day you got almost 500,000 people there. I mean, it's just electric. The energy in the whole space is just unbelievable. It really is. And all the traditions they have, it's like. I mean, I don't know if anyone who's listening has been to Le Mans, but I mean, they're pretty serious about their traditions and this, that, and the other. But I mean, Indy's like, take it to a whole other level,
There's a back home again in Indiana, and start your engines and the balloons and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, one day, hopefully next year. Just very quickly, I want to touch on something that obviously if we don't want to talk about it, it's absolutely fine. 96, you unfortunately involved in an incident where Jeff Krosnoff lost his life. Awful accident in Toronto, and it just looked like it was just one of those racing things, wasn't it? It just guys moving for position and contact, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's exactly what it was. It was just one of those things. I mean, everybody's going for a gap. I mean, Emerson. I went braking late to try to get past Emerson. Emerson dived to the right because I think he was trying to have a go at someone. So I had to swerve, and I didn't even know Jeff was coming, guns blazing. And there was just nowhere to go. And it was just one of those things. It's just. I mean, it was nothing anyone could do about it, I don't think.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Jeff was a really good mate. I mean, we actually sat on the pace car, waving to the same pace car on the before the start of the race. Just about because we used to spend a lot of time together in Japan. Him and I, when I raced in Japan as well, he was there. We were doing a lot. We were just hanging out a lot together. So we were pretty good buddies.
Yeah, that's a real shot. And it just feels like one of those things. If it had happened 2 seconds earlier or 2 seconds later, there'd have been contact.
I mean, sadly, it's like that when things like that happen. I mean, it's just everything is at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, it's just one of those very, very sad things.
Yeah.
So obviously thereafter, you decided to move away from IndyCar, and you went into sports car. Was it quite sporadic racing in the sports cars? It wasn't a full seasons. It was just racing here.
I sort of didn't know. Kind of when I decided to stop IndyCar at the end of '96, then I kind of was kind of in a limbo there, what to do, because I also started my own team at that point in Indy Lights, and and then Andy Evans called me up 2 days before. Hang on a second, someone's trying to call me.
Right.
Sorry, excuse me 1 second. I just have to give them a message.
No problem. Unless it's Scott Dixon, tell him to come on.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. This is Oh, we've been talking for almost 2 hours.
I was going to say it's rattling by. I'm not going to keep it for too long. I just got a couple more bits I want to get through. But
No, that's good. I mean, I just yeah. So Andy Evans called me up right before Sebring in '97. You know, so if I was interested to come and drive his 333, because I'd done some races with Andy in the past. You know, and Ferrari too. So I said, sure, why not? So I went. You know, and we ended up winning it, of course. Which was great. And then, but Reinhold was also there. You know, I was just sort of looking, and I used to drive with Reinhold in '83 and '84, uh, with the 15 years before, basically, in the 956 Porsche.
yeah.
And then after we won, he came out. Oh, you know, do you want to do Le Mans with us this year? And I said, yeah, why not? You know, so then that's where I got reacquainted with Michael at the same time.
Yes.
And this other guy, Tom Christensen, you know, who
I think I've heard of him. He's done something at Le Mans, hasn't he?
yeah,
He's,
yeah. So 97 ended up being quite a good year. So I only did 3 races and I won all 3 of them. So it was actually a pretty decent year as well. Yeah,
100% record. I just seen like Rob Harbord, sorry, has just commented. Says a great Le Mans in 2003 with JJ Leto. Said you would have won if the Bentleys weren't racing, which is probably fair comment. And he loved the Golf Audi as well. Yeah, you gotta love the Golf.
Yeah,
always look good.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. I mean, you mentioned about the Le Mans in 2007. Obviously, we spoke. In 97. Sorry, we spoke with David Brabham the other week, and he said when he won Le Mans in 2009, he said it felt like the end. It felt like the end of a journey. He said, "Wow, I've like won the big one." And he said he thought he'd be ecstatic and jumping up and down like an idiot on the podium and stuff, and he wasn't. He was just standing, taking it in, thinking, "Wow, I've done it." Was it the same for you with Le Mans,
a little bit,
or was it just like
it takes it a little bit to process, you know, because you're still in race mode and it's just part of the whole thing, you know. But yeah, I mean, it was obviously a great thing to stand there with a crowd, you know, this massive crowd that's in front of you there, you know. It was a pretty special moment for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you know, well, it was like David Brabham said it was the highlight of his career, and you know, fair enough. Can't really argue that. Just a few quick words on like Tom Christensen. Yeah, it was his birthday this week, so happy birthday, Tom. I mean, to go and win Le Mans 9 times to date, and obviously his first one was alongside you and Michele. He's done some amazing things, hasn't he, in sports car? I mean, to win it 9 times is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, have you been in contact with him since that race?
Of course,
yeah. I guess you.
Absolutely. Many things. I mean, we're not in constant contact, but you know, we speak every now and then. You know, and if there's anything going on, yeah. I mean, we're in touch for sure.
Yeah. Awesome record he's got. Just going to move on very, very quickly. Excuse me. Sorry, I've just seen that you were teammate with Tom Coronel in 2001. He came on for a chat recently.
Yeah.
He's a character. Yeah, he's a good guy. Just move on to the driver management that you're doing now. Obviously, was that something that was on your mind, or was it just something that you've kind of fallen into?
I fell into it really with Scott to start with, you know, because when I had my Indy Lights team, you know, he came over and tested, and I could see right away that he was obviously a bit special, you know, to say the least, even at 16 years of age, you know, at the time. So we sort of signed him up, you know, for the year and kind of carried a fair part of the cost, you know, and we got a management deal for a few years, and then that ran out. But we've been working together ever since. You know, it's been 24 years, I think, this year.
Crikey. Yeah, he's 40. Yeah. I mean, he always kind of struck me as a guy in the last few years. You know, certainly more so the last few years. I thought he never had a crack at F1 or a proper crack. I mean, if he had done, do you think he could have achieved the success in F1 or something similar to what he's achieved in IndyCar? Because is he 6-time champion? Is he? I think 6 times. Do you think he could have really done it in F1?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's no question in my mind that he wouldn't have been a top. But you know, the difference with Formula One is, of course, you know, you got to be in the right car. You know, you got to get in the right. We did a test with Williams that went really well. The first test in particular. Then we got a 2-day test in Spain, but the weather was crap, and it just never, not much came out of it. And then, but the biggest problem was that BMW was the partner with Williams, and they didn't want a rookie in the
Right.
car, so they didn't want to take that risk. And so we kind of used that to leverage a pretty good deal out of, Wigan asked it to stay in IndyCar, and that was we did a 3-year deal, and then that, 3 years after that in IndyCar, you're too old for Formula One.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
So he never got the opportunity to.
no, exactly. No.
But he's just consistent as hell, isn't he? He's just
Yeah.
constantly just there. I mean, I've just got some figures on him just very quickly. I mean, he said he was a Chip Ganassi Racing since 2003, and said he's got 345 races, 124 podiums from 345 races. 6-time champion, Indy 500 winner. He's won the Daytona 24 hours 3 times. I mean,
Yeah,
just absolutely amazing.
He's one of the top, I would say, top 5 drivers in the world. Period. I think, no question.
I agree with that, because I think people see IndyCar as sort of like a step down from F1, which is incredibly unfair, because I just think it's an
you can see it. I mean, I think anyone who comes from F1, I think, well, it's so competitive now. It's just crazy,
Well, I think, what was it after? Was it 7 rounds? Was it 7 rounds and 7 different winners this year?
Yeah, well, 5 different winners, I think.
Was it 5? 5, yeah. It was just right the way through. But just very quick, I mean, obviously Scott, he's like 3rd overall, very consistent. We've got some young guys coming through. Obviously, we've got Alex Palou and O'Ward, we've got Pato O'Ward and Colton Herter, Rhinus VK, even Jack Harvey. How do you rate these guys? Do you reckon they could get into F1? Because there's talk of Palou and O'Ward leaning towards F1, but do you think they could make that switch?
I can't see where the opening is going to be at the moment.
That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no gaps really, and I think with F1, if you're not part of any one of the systems, it's going to be very difficult to get into that program. I think, as an outsider, and I think IndyCar, unfortunately, the guys that came over from IndyCar didn't really do a great job, in the past. So I think that's still that's a stigma that somehow, I mean, the bottom line is basically any type of racing you do, you have to become a specialist on that particular category, I mean, you can take the best F1 driver and put him in a touring car. He's going to get murdered, I mean, he'll be lucky to finish in the top 10 at any of the races. And the same thing in, like, some of the guys that went from F1 to NASCAR even, or, I mean, it's just every category you've got to become a specialist,
And it's very difficult to do well in both, which is why, people like Mario and even Nigel Mansell, it was very impressive what they did. And it's impressive what
different back then, because the cars weren't so specialist like they are now.
Yeah, they're more broad.
So technical now, and you can only do so much as a driver. The rest all comes out of the car, So if you don't get the most out of the car, you're still going to be half a second off,
Yeah. Which is why I think it's very impressive what Scott McLaughlin's doing to go from
he's done a great job, actually.
To go from supercars, which is, real brute, monstrous, heavy, holding Commodore and stuff, to get into an Indy car and do what he's done has been very good. No, cool. Very quickly, just want to touch on the artwork that you do before we shoot off, because has it always been something that you've been interested in, or because I've seen some of it and it's very colourful, and it's because I'm no artist. I'm not. I think my 3-year-old daughter is a better artist than I am. I'll put it that way. But how did you get into it? Because I love the work you do. It's very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, I was always in. I mean, not always, in fact, but at sort of fairly early age, I was interested in art. So when I started making some money in racing, I started collecting some bits and pieces here and there, and various races you go to some galleries and stuff, and just see what what's out there. And then but I really didn't start painting until, it was weird because it happened when Elio De Angelis, we were really good buddies. He was like my best friend really then. We were hanging out together all the time between races and stuff. We spent a lot of time together. And when he got killed, that affected me pretty badly. So
sure, yeah.
I don't know to this day, but somehow I ended up going to get some paint and canvas and do something in his memory or whatever. So that's kind of what got me started.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
got, really hooked on it. So I started then doing just as a hobby, or as some kind of a therapy to maybe kind of process all that, and take my mind off whatever was going on, So that's how it got started. And then I've been doing it on and off as a hobby for all these years, but it's maybe the last 5 or 6 years now I really started to take it more serious, like something I really want to do with my life,
Yeah.
and sort of become known as an artist as well.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
no, that's cool. That's all good. It's sort of taken off the last few years because I mean, I've seen the works that you've done, and I find that it's like the symmetry of it,
yeah,
and the colours. And one, I don't have the patience, and two, getting that symmetry with what you do and finding a theme for it and bringing it to life. I just find that because my brain doesn't work that way. I just find
yeah.
that absolutely amazing to get that symmetry and the use of color. That's
Yeah,
very
it's
cool.
a great thing, when you get an idea in your head and you start churning it, and you put it out and it sort of see it come alive. It's a really great feeling, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. Right, yeah, we're almost 2 hours in. I'm just going to run through a few little fun questions at the end, like we always tend to do, and then I'm going to finish with something that like Ira Sokolova. She's put it in English now, so that's good. We're going to come to that at the end, but very quickly, toughest driver you ever raced against in F1 and in IndyCar, or the hardest competitor, if you could.
Oh my.
And I know there's a lot.
Well, it's probably Mario actually.
Yeah.
Mario took no prisoners, but he was fair, but tough. Yeah.
Yeah, Mario, and obviously he was in both series, so yeah, he kind of
Yeah.
knows what he's doing, doesn't he? Mario, and he's still out there now, isn't he, doing the racing? This is an awkward one. The best teammate you ever had? Who was your favourite teammate? Who you gelled with the best?
I had a great time with most of my teammates. Actually, I think it just depends a lot on yourself too. But there's a lot of good crack going on and up in the engineering room. When you finish the serious stuff, and but the guy I really had a lot of good memories with was Alan Prost.
Yeah,
He got on great. Yeah, he was. Completely what you don't expect. When you see him.
really.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had a lot of good times together.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have
Yeah,
thought you'd have said him, but no, that's good. No,
yeah.
love that. Love that. This was a question that came up earlier on. Excuse me, I've forgotten who it was who actually put it across. But it said, what was the favourite car that you drove in your career? Your car that you just love to drive?
Well, the Audi R8 was an amazing car.
Yeah,
it was probably the best developed, best sorted car I ever drove. It was an extraordinary car. We used to, we got a sort of when I ran my own car, with our arena, with my girl, we used to get a setup sheet from Audi, sort of a baseline setup sheet when we start the weekend.
yeah.
And you faff around with the car and you change this and you change that. When we roll it back in the truck after the race on Sunday, it was like maybe one hole of rear wing, more or less, or one click on the front bar, and that was it. The car was identical to how it was the most sorted race car I ever drove in my life, I think.
Wow, that's cool. That's very cool. Let's see. Okay, favorite career moment. If you could pick one moment from your career, what would you think that was very cool? What was the?
Well, obviously winning Le Mans was amazing, there's no doubt. But I think Imola '85, when I ran out of fuel, which I would, obviously I was leading when I ran out of fuel. And if I ever drove a perfect race, I think that must have been a one because, we knew what the fuel number was. I was always right below it the whole time. I didn't burn too much fuel in the beginning, just stayed patient, and just started ticking everybody off, and then what happened was there was a tiny little crack on the inlet manifold, which sucked in more air, which then
change the mixture.
Then the engine was pumping in more fuel to keep the same mixture.
Yeah.
So it was using more fuel than it should have. You know. So
I think I remember you saying, it might have been when you were putting a description on one of your paintings, it was about when you took the lead at Imola in front of the Tifosi, and you said you could hear the roar. I mean, that must have been amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty. You couldn't hear the engine of the car, you know, because of all the sound of the crowd. Wow. It was pretty wild.
Wow, amazing. Very quickly, I want to come to the question that was in for earlier on. Did you ever feel as a child that there was something else sort of big for you besides racing? And she says sometimes when she reads drivers' memoirs, it seems like they didn't have any other hobbies apart from racing. What else did you enjoy doing before you went racing? Or was it always?
Well, I used to be pretty decent at ice hockey. I played in the second division, right below pro level in Sweden. But I think, I mean, it may sound weird, but I think my calling in life was really not racing, but it was the art, and I should have done the art a lot sooner, I feel. But the racing always pulled me away from it, you know.
Yeah.
And it was only when I decided to stop driving, which was only 5 years ago, that I finally really got going, you know, and really started to develop all these ideas I've had for years, you know, and make something happen out of it.
Yeah. And you know, I think going racing in F1 and Le Mans, it's a pretty good thing to be pulled away from art for. And I think we're all glad that that it did, because you know, I certainly always enjoyed watching you race, and it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you about everything this evening. I really appreciate your time.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank everybody who was online too.
And yeah, it's great. There's been quite a few. There's been a lot of people on there, but unfortunately, folks, we've run out of time. We've kept Stefan for 2 hours, and it's gone 11 o'clock in Stockholm, so you might need some sleep. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's almost daylight out here still, so you know.
Oh, correct. Well, yeah, far out.
Very weird.
It's not here. It's dark here. But no, thank you very, very much for joining, Stefan. I really, really appreciate it. And as I said, for a guy who got into F1 in the 80s, and you know, you've been in motorsport for as long as I can remember. So it's been brilliant talking to you. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Great stuff.
Great.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. Good night.